Hello grade 8s. In a moment I'm going to put up your title and learning objective, but here's a quick starter activity I would like you to do, and we will take up the answer in class together. Last lesson we were talking about the early Indian civilizations, and here's one called Mohenjo-Daro, which was uncovered by some engineers in the 1850s, so it had long crumbled. But what I would like you to do is look at both pictures and write 2 to 3 bullet points about how this civilization or this settlement lived. If you want, you're free to pause this video and Google more pictures, but what I want you to think about is how this settlement was constructed. In this reconstruction here, think about what things you can see inside that give an indication of how this group lived. So you can pause this video now, write down your bullet points, we'll take those up in class. Here is your title and your learning objectives. So today I'm going to be talking to you guys about a group called the Aryans. Your learning objective is we're going to understand how this group spread, how they migrated, and specifically look at their ways of life in India. So you can pause this now to write down your title and learning objective. Okay, the Aryans arrive. So last lesson we were talking about early Indian civilizations, and we know that most of them lived along the Indus Valley, which was a river found in northern India. Unfortunately, a lot of those civilizations, including the one in your starter activity, ended up disappearing. A lot of that, historians believe, is due to flooding and earthquakes. So that was around 2000 to 1500 before Common Era. So a lot of those civilizations sort of ceased to exist. And a new group came in and settled that area, and that group is called the Aryans. So the Aryans are believed to be part of a much larger group, which are called Indo-Europeans. And I'm going to explain where that name comes from in a moment. But the reason why historians believe the Aryans that settled in India are from this group is because of similarities in language. So if we look at all these different groups of Indo-Europeans, we can draw a line between the way those languages developed, and that shows us that they probably were once part of the same group, and these languages sort of stem away from the one original language. I'm going to show you some examples in a minute. So this group of Indo-Europeans spread west through Europe and also moved south to India and Iran. If you need to copy these notes, you can always pause the video at any time. Okay, here's a map of what I'm talking about. Sorry, the title looks like it's been cut off at the top, but it says Indo-European Migrations. So right here is the Black Sea, and this is where we think the Indo-Europeans originated from. And these arrows show where they migrated to. So we have Greece, we have Spain here, some going to the United Kingdom, we have a line to Italy, and if we follow these lines, it takes us to India. Right? And along here is the Indus River. So that is where the first Aryans sort of set up camp in India, right along here, which is where we were talking about last lesson. So moments ago I said that we can tell that these Aryans that we're going to discuss today come from the Indo-Europeans is because of similarities in language. So let me show you, go hop over this map again. Let me show you an example. So the language that these Aryans develop when they live in India is called Sanskrit. So I've highlighted that for you. And up here we can see English, German, Spanish, Greek, Latin. Those are other places that these Indo-Europeans migrated to and sort of developed their own language. But you can see similarities in these words, right? The English word for father in German is Vater, Spanish padre, Greek pater, Latin pater, Sanskrit pitar. You can definitely see that. Have a look through these other words as well, so you can pause this. what I would like you to do, and I would like us to share this in class together, is I want you to research these words in an Indo-European language, and I would like you to do that in French. Find these words, so Father, One, Son, and God. Find those words in French, and you are going to find out that there are definitely similarities between this Indo-European language and these words right here. Okay? So I want you to look up these words in French. Now I want you to, again, Google these words, but in a language that is not Indo-European. So I've decided let's pick Japanese because you're going to find that the Japanese word for father is not going to be anything close to these words, whereas the French word will likely be. I could give you an example. One in Korean, which is not an Indo-European language, right? These Aryans did not go out that far. The Korean word for one is Hana. This is not very close. Father, I believe is Abotsi. Starts with the letter A. Aeobit J-E, I believe, so not anywhere close. So if you want to pause the video and you want to do your research now, you can do that, or you can come back to it. So look up the uh, French words for these and Japanese, and we'll compare those in class. Okay, the Aryans settle. So we know that they originally settled along the Indus Valley. So many civilizations had set up shop there. So our first Aryans settle there. Eventually they decide to move along to the Ganges River, which is another major river that we've spoken about. And eventually they come around these mountains and they settle around the Deccan Plateau. And this is when they really decide we're going to stop being nomadic, we're going to settle. So even though they had lived around here before, maybe they were nomadic and they did own lots of animals, they would bring them with them as they moved. But now, later on, they decide to actually create settlements and move in. And there are people living there already, and we're going to see what sort of implications that brings to those people. But what was their way of life? Since they decide to stop being nomadic, they do start farming crops and things like that. And they decide to improve this technology by making farming a lot easier. So they do build iron plows. So they're the first people in this region to do that, and they're able to clear off all this land and make create all this farmland. They also decide to build canals, and that helps with irrigation. And as we think back to the Egyptians, they did the same thing so that they could carry water from the river all the way to their crops. So the Aryans are smart enough to figure that out and do that as well. They also are able to develop their own language, which is also written, so not just oral, and that is called Sanskrit. And we just talked about that a couple slides ago. So that you can see all this change that they bring into this region. These Aryans also develop their own different tribes, which kind of become their own kingdoms, actually. The leader of this tribe is called a Raja, or a prince. So we do see some battles that exists that happen between those. And the Aryans are good warriors. We'll talk about that a little bit more next lesson, but they do have things like they're excellent horse riders. They have good weapons and things like that. So they do battle each other for land. Okay, pause this if you need to copy these notes down or add anything I've said. Okay, one of the social implications that the Aryans bring when they move into the main part of India, like the Deccan Plateau, and they move along the Ganges, there's a lot of flat land there where they start farming, and there are people living there already. So what the Aryans do is they decide to set up something that is called a caste system. And what that means is they told everyone that they were going to be put into a social class. And there are 4 social classes, and you can see this pyramid here. Don't worry about copying the pyramid down because I'll have a handout for you next lesson. But here are the groups. So the top class is called the Brahmins, and those are the priests or religious leaders. The second group is called the Kshatriya, and those are the warriors, and I just mentioned those. So they're very strong, talented warriors. They win lots of wars. Then below us, we have two bigger groups. So one is called the Vaisya, and those are the farmers, the traders. These are common people living in society. And then there is the last group, which you don't want to be in, but that is called the Shudras. So they don't have very much money. They are mostly servants. They don't have many skills. And that is how the caste system worked. So you were born into this group, you would marry within this group, you would socialize with this group, you wouldn't want to hang out with people below you, and you weren't allowed to marry into another group above you. So you were basically stuck into this group. There is another group that is not even on the pyramid. And they're called the untouchables. So those are people who were considered to be very dirty and they were completely looked down upon. And yeah, you were considered to be just dirt beneath your feet if you were in that group. So they're not even on this diagram that we have. So the Aryans brought in this caste system, and I want you to really think about why did they do this. And we will talk about this more last lesson, but something to consider is that these Indo-Europeans that come in have lighter skin color. They come into India, and the people that are living there have a darker skin. So these new Aryans that come in saw that and recognized that. So if you were in one of these probably top 3 castes, you probably had lighter skin than the people below you. And you probably had more money too. So the Aryans developed their own way of life and they were excellent farmers, so they were able to make lots of money and buy lots of things like cattle. So they had money. So I want you to think about, why do you think this caste system was created? Okay, we are going to stop for there today. If you need to rewatch this at any time, to pause, to take notes, you are free to do so. And we'll take up all the things that you answered, like this question here, in the next lesson. I'll have some handouts for you. Okay, see you soon.